Hey, I'm Steve Smothers with Better Covenant Living, and I make videos to provoke and challenge you to think differently about Jesus and His kingdom.
How is the message of the kingdom of God relevant for us today?
Yeah, I would say that we all have a kingdom of God is like story. And I think that's the relevant thing. I think that when Jesus told these parables to His disciples and to us today, I think what He was really saying is, hey, don't just regurgitate these parables that I'm telling you, but get your own kingdom of God is like stories. That's why I like the Yay God stories of just what God is doing. And one that kind of fresh that comes to mind this past weekend, we had what we called an impact weekend where we went out and visited people in our neighborhood and brought them fruit, and some people that really just had need, and prayed for them and prayed for healing and just shared the goodness of God, blessed them. And before the pandemic, we had been in one particular neighborhood and had done a big Thanksgiving meal. And so we had gotten to know several people, and there was one family, an Iraqi family, that lived in that neighborhood. I thought they had moved. I didn't even know they were still in the neighborhood. And so there was a couple, Tom and Brenda, who went into that neighborhood and they brought fruit and whatnot. And so they came back and they told me this story. They said, we went into the neighborhood and we were so excited to go see our friends that they don't speak much English, but their son speaks English. He graduated from in San Marcos. He'd gone to school there, and actually another person in our group knew him, had been his teacher. And so they walked up to the door and they invited him in. They're so gracious. They're so happy to see him. And they fed him and they were talking. And the wife, again in Arabic, was saying, she said, my husband has cancer. He has cancer in his stomach. And she began to tell a story. She said, this is a Muslim lady. She said, I began to go to the Catholic Church every day for 10 days, knowing that he was going to be x-rayed and whatnot to see how the cancer was coming along, what our treatment plan would be. And she said, I would go to the Catholic Church every day, would light a candle and pray to Mary for my husband, which I thought was really interesting. And she said on the fourth day, she said something really interesting happened. And I'm thinking, this is already an interesting story. She said, my husband and I were sitting in our house and we looked outside and we saw a white dove just land on our porch. We thought, that's really interesting. And so we opened the door, and as we opened the door, the dove walked inside of the house. And Tom and Brenda were both, telling me they were both kind of skeptical. And they said, immediately, they both said, hey, look at this. And they had videoed on their phones this bird in their house, this dove, this white dove, walking through their house. And then he finally walked out and kind of landed on one of their vehicles, just stood there. And so they're looking at this dove, and this dove is looking at them, and they're thinking, okay. So for the next several days, 6 days or whatever, the wife continued to go back to the Catholic Church. She would light her candle. She'd pray to Mary. And at the end of that time, they went to the doctor and checked the husband out. And so the doctor came back and he said, your husband has no cancer whatsoever. And so Brenda and Tom said to them, they said, so Jesus healed you. Now mind you, they don't speak English, but both the wife and the husband said, Jesus healed me. And so I was just thinking about how wacky the kingdom of God can be sometimes. We're kind of like going, okay, doves walking into your house, praying to Mary, lighting candles, and God just shows up. And He, in the most unexpected ways and times, meets us. And so I think that's why the kingdom of God matters to us today and just kind of everyday stuff. There are stories, there are people around us that need to know the goodness of God. They need to know the authority and power of God. They need to know His care, that He is a God who really sees, He invites. He's a God who serves us. He's a sacrificial King. And so that's just a story of that. And so, I think we get to display that kingdom of God is like every day of our lives. And so I think that's why it matters.